What's going on, guys? It's Paul from Boosted Films. Just a quick reminder that all my videos are ad-free for 5 days to my subscribers, so go ahead and make sure you're subscribed. So in this video, we're going to take a look inside two different US market transfer cases. One is an ACD transfer case and the other a non-ACD. So this is a bit of a longer video, but two quick things I wanted to start with right from the top is I want to show you the difference between an ACD and a non-ACD. So as you can see here, the ACD transfer case is on the left side of the screen, the non-ACD is on the right, and you can see the difference kind of in the cover that goes over the differential. You can certainly see the difference there. If you're looking to buy one, you should be able to see the difference here with the ACD and the non-ACD. And the second item I want to show right off the beginning is basically how to tell if you have a limited slip differential in your non-ACD T case. Hi, do you want to be in my video? So just a quick note, all the ACD transfer cases will have a limited slip front differential inside them. However, the non-ACD cases could have a limited slip from the factory if they were in a 2004 RS model, and that's here in the US. But they could also be an open front differential in the non-ACD transfer cases. Okay, you're done? So basically what you're looking for in that front differential is if it has kind of a pin going through it. When you look in the circle, you're going to see a pin kind of going through like this. If you see that pin, you're going to know it's an open front differential. However, if that pin's not there and it looks almost more solid, or if it just has a couple different rings inside, it's probably got a limited slip from the factory or potentially an aftermarket one that was put into that non-ACD transfer case. And I will touch on this more later in the video to give you more details, but I just want to cover a couple of those items right up front so you don't have to watch this whole long video if that's all you came here to learn. So I brought these two transfer cases to Andy at ASM, and I will preface this video by saying neither one of us are experts in this category. We really just want to tear these apart, get a look inside, try to figure this out. You'll even kind of hear us talking about things that we're trying to figure out in our head as we go. So this is not meant to be how to rebuild a transfer case or anything like that. It's really just to give my viewers an inside look inside of both a non-ACD and an ACD transfer case. However, if you are an expert, if you have more insight on this, of course, we love to hear from you as well. So leave a comment in the comments section if we missed something or we stated something wrong. And as always, check the video description for any big updates. If there's something that we totally messed up, I'll try to update it there in the video description. But with that, we'll just jump into the video.
I'll say right now, I mean, I've only had one apart to put a the front limited slip in. Okay. We shattered a couple of the stock front LSDs. I think one I broke at Super Lab. I don't know. I broke two.
In your EVO 9? In
my EVO 9. Since I've used I had a wave track in one for a short time, and then we went to the ATS front limited slips. So it's a carbon hybrid.
Was better than the wave track, you think?
As far as strength, like probably I don't think they're any better than strength-wise than a wave track, but performance, you're getting a lot better. The wave track is a torsion style diff, where the ATS is a clutch packed style diff, and it uses a we're using they call them hybrids. It's carbon plate, steel plate, carbon plate, steel plate, instead of their full carbon, which is all carbon plates. Yes, torsion. Yep, torsion needs some resistance on the other side, otherwise it's just going to be an open diff. Okay. So torsons are a good factory type diff. I mean, they do a decent job, but from a performance standpoint, like a true performance standpoint, it's hard to beat a really good tuned clutch type diff.
To see the difference, you can obviously tell the cover is a lot different.
Yes, so the big difference, this is the ACD clutches are inside this top piece. So you can see the seam right there. Mm-hmm. This comes apart separately, whereas this one, there's no separate cover to it.
And then obviously there's the line that the ACD pump would run to. That's different. And that's why when you replace these, that's why you have to remove this line, obviously, to get to this bolt.
Right, when you do a clutch job or anything where you got to take the T case out, that's what everyone always complains about, like you have to disconnect the ACD line, which means you got to rebleed the ACD system and stuff, which isn't too much harder, but it is another step, and it makes a mess because a lot of times you get the ACD fluid that runs all out.
So you got to pull that.
So you got to pull this shaft out, similar to like you took the other one out. It's been a while since I've had one of these apart, so So there's,
Inside it a little bit.
if you take this one bolt, is there another small one? That holds the ACD cover, ACD clutches in. So when you're taking this all apart, you need to keep those small bolts on because that's going to keep the ACD clutches. I don't know if you want to get that far of taking it all apart to see. Yeah, I've had them all apart before, except for I've never had to do the ring and pinion part of it, which, like I was saying, I guess it's hard. They don't make shims anymore. Mitsubishi doesn't sell the shims to properly shim the ring and pinion depth and stuff. So I know John at TRE, I think he's making his own. I just send my T cases and stuff to him to do. We'll take those out and I'll show you. So here's your...
That's the front diff, right? So then, technically, isn't that the front diff?
Yeah, doesn't this slide out? Yeah, your front diff is inside this housing.
See what it looks. So this is your pinion part, right? Or
yeah, this would be your pinion gear. This is the ring gear.
So it's not junk, right? Because this is what would normally wear.
Yeah,
when
I don't know when they start to whine. I guess I've never seen
torn apart or one that whine.
Yeah, I mean I've seen these where you have a complete tooth that's chipped off or whatever. Just had to lift up perfectly straight. So yeah, your ACD clutches are in here. We'll go over that in a sec. But this is where it gets confusing how to visualize where the power is coming from. So you've got, let's see, how did we do this? So this is coming in from the trans, and there's 3 total shafts there. That most inner shaft connects to what? The very, very inner one. Front axle. Right? So you have that one and the other inside. But the very inner one, you can see my finger over here.
Yeah.
That's the driver's side axle. And this one, the passenger side axle, would go way the hell in there. Which is what this connected to, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I won't go into extreme
we can try
depth,
to figure it out, but I don't know if I'll include this part.
These two go into the ACD part of it. So that what your center diff is doing is it's controlling the amount of slip between 2 sides, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you have these 2 sides.
I thought the front diff. See, what throws me about calling anything a center diff is when you ever buy a differential for an EVO, you're buying a front differential or a rear.
You can
You're never buying a center.
You can.
Where's the center?
The center, the limited slip part of the center is in here. In the ACD.
Okay.
Your center differential is in the transmission.
But I thought you just said the center differential for this one is right here.
The center diff gears are in the transmission.
Gears.
But controlling the amount of slip between those.
Okay.
What this is doing is controlling that resistance. It's controlling through clutch packs. That's why there's 2 shafts here. How much how much slip between front and center, or sorry, front and rear. This is.
Yeah, I know. So this is controlling slip between front and rear. This is controlling slip between both fronts, right?
Inside. Well, you've got a couple shafts happening here. This is where it's very confusing by looking at just this, because you have those very, very inner shafts controlling the front axle.
There's 3 levels of shaft.
But then you also have the transfer case gears, so it's transferring power through through here, which goes through the ACD part of it.
Yeah.
And then half of it goes back through the housing, while the other half goes through the front diff. It's so hard to explain because I don't, and maybe I'm even explaining it slightly wrong. But the power is going like in and out. It's very confusing. So the actual the front diff, if you wanted to replace it, you'd take these bolts out. This cover would come off.
Yeah.
The ring gear would fall off, and this bottom housing would come off, and you'd pull the actual diff unit out, the actual front diff. So this is, you know how a clutch works, right?
Yes.
Clutch plates and whatever. Mm-hmm. That's exactly how ACD works, but instead of your foot on the pedal controlling the clutch engagement, this is controlled by fluid. fluid controlled by the pump. So you have your ACD pump that's building pressure, and then there's a solenoid that opens and closes to allow a specific amount of pressure. So if you look on your ACD, the whole pump unit, you have the ACD pump, there's an ACD solenoid, and then there's an ACD pressure sensor. So with those three things, it's able to control how much pressure it's sending to this clutch up here. More pressure equals more harder engagement.
Yeah.
Less pressure is like you pressing on the clutch, like pulling pressure off.
Yeah, the guy that shipped this one didn't take out much fluid. So there's what's in.
It's just stuck.
What are those rings? Those are the
Clutch.
clutches?
Yep, it's a multi-plate. It's a wet clutch system.
What does a wet one mean?
Wet means that it's floating in fluid.
So this is where I get scared that I need to put it in the right order or the right.
I mean, there is there's an inner and outer. Because you have these tangs on the inside, so it's stacked. So there's multiple ones that are stacked. That would sit on like that. So they're stacked. So yeah, you'll have one that's connected to the outer, and the next one that's connected to the inner, another one's connected to the outer, and then connected to the inner. And that's all controlled based on fluid pressure. So the more pressure, the more hydraulic pressure, the more pressure is on the clutches to hold them together.
Or what do you mean?
All these little tanks, you have to do one at a time.
Okay.
Because if you pull them all out, they're all going to be
Yeah.
it's perfect. You know.
Now that's deep enough. Not going any further.
I'll take this cover back off so you can kind of see it again.
What would?
One it just stuck. So here, this is.
Why are they? Yeah.
Well, the reason there's two is you have.
Oh, the outer and the inner. Yeah.
Yep. You see how there's they alternate.
Like
yeah. Yep.
Hold it down here because my camera might be down. Like.
Oh,
yeah,
sorry.
So there. Okay.
So
So gear here, gear there.
Yep.
Yeah. Now you gotta make sure you put them back in the right way. Yeah.
Yeah. So
inner
that
again.
that one's that one's an inner.
Cool. That makes sense to me to see. That's why I need to visualize. You said
Mhm.
outer, inner, and I didn't fully understand, but when I see it that way, I get it.
This is how most clutch type diffs work. There's you know how people talk in the EVO rear diff, how they restack.
Yeah.
It's like this. You have an outer and inner, outer and inner. In the US version, they've got, I can't remember how it is, but it's like it's an outer and an outer stacked on top of each other. Well, that's not going to do anything, right? There's no friction happen between the two. So you'll restack an outer, inner, outer, inner, outer, inner. And you'll restack them, and that will create more friction, so more lockup.
So other than stacking them that way, it doesn't matter. Like this has to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Like that. Like this one could be changed with a different one. That's like this outer could be in place
Correct.
of a different outer. Like that.
Usually,
doesn't
yes.
matter.
Yep.
Okay.
So in this one, I believe they're all the same. On like rear diffs, sometimes your outer one, the very very outer one, has a slight wave to it. They call it like the spring disc, and it can create some initial lockup. I think they call it initial torque or whatever. You can actually use that to tune. That's how they tune a lot of your differentials, is by changing the orientation of these, and then changing that wave spring that's on the. Some of them it's a separate spring. It's not an actual clutch disc, but some I think there's a disc that will have a little wave or whatever to it. How it mounts. There. It's getting that bearing just to seat just right for it to fall on.
Core. I'm like, okay, fine. Otherwise, people are asking $1,500 to $2,000 for those things, even with the open diff.
It's crazy. Well, everyone wants to go non-ACD. That's
Yep.
the problem. I don't understand that. I'd take an ACD case.
Yeah.
Pure center diff. So we know the trends are the same, right? I know
Yes.
for a fact the center diff gears are always in the transmission.
Yeah,
On
everyone
EVO E8, 9, whatever, everything. That's all the same. Right. The true center differential, when you say differential, it's the differential gears. And the differential gears is inside the transmission.
Okay.
But the way it's managing the amount of slip on the differential is through this thing. Yeah, I don't know if we gotta make sure we.
Is that the same as this one? So this is the. I'm curious. This is one thing I would like to kind of let people see. So this is non-ACD, right? Oops. Yeah. Looks like they're pretty much the same.
Yep.
They're probably interchangeable. Whatever. What.
Let's not interchange them, but. So the housings are definitely, obviously different.
Yeah.
You can really see the housings are different.
Well, you can. This.
Well, not this housing, but the front diff housing. I'm sorry. Like, see how different that looks?
Actually, that's a little good. I'm gonna point that out. I'm gonna film this a little bit. So this one does look.
And if I had to make an educated guess, the wear pattern doesn't look very good on this. Like, it looks, there's like a lot of scoring
Like you're saying, inside here.
on the gears. Yeah, where the tooth contact would be. I've always had the understanding it's kind of a slightly polished surface you're looking for.
And you think, and this one does look a little better on the ACD.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I think pretty sure that's a viscous. So this, yep.
That's okay.
Okay, so this is a differential.
And that's an open.
That's the viscous.
Okay.
Yep.
And this is why I know it. This is how you can look in though. That's how you can visualize and
Yep.
see when you have a non-LSD.
Okay, so it does have a
front diff.
viscous.
So okay, so these are the two differentials we wanted to clarify, right? So
Yep.
this is
This
a
is a viscous.
front diff, and this is your center diff.
Yep. This is your viscous. This isn't the differential gears, this is just the viscous.
Center.
This is controlling
Would you call
the amount
it?
of resistance for the center diff. Yes. So you have power coming in, and then the axles, you've got one axle that snaps into this, that's attached to this gear. You've got one axle coming in attaching to this gear.
Mm-hmm.
So here's your, so each wheel,
It's
so
separate.
pretend this is basically connecting to your left wheel,
Yeah.
right wheel.
And it's independent
So
from each other, pretty much.
Those can go, when you're
Yeah.
turning, so you're going down the road, this whole thing's turning, right?
Mm-hmm.
But now when you're turning around a corner, this wheel has to travel less distance, and this one has to travel more distance.
Mm-hmm.
So what happens? You have a differential. You see how this one's traveling faster, and this one's
Yeah.
actually going backwards, so now you're turning.
It's funny how it can do that when it doesn't look like it should be able to. Power down to just one.
If power is happening, power always wants to go the path of least resistance. If both these have the same amount of resistance,
It works fine.
it works fine, in theory. So if you have equal grip on both sides, perfectly fine. But that's never really the case. Even on a perfectly level ground with everything perfect, the weight distribution is not perfect on an
Yeah.
EVO. The left side's probably a little heavier, you know, so not that it's that much and might not cause really that much of a deal, but
But basically, you're going to end up with an open diff. You're going to end up losing power to one wheel. Is really what.
power is
it comes
always going to go path of least resistance.
Yeah.
So
down to. So you got to add resistance to get it to go to that other wheel, which is.
yep, and that's where you get like the, you know how they always talk about like the E-diffs and stuff?
No.
E-diff, new cars, so they don't have an actual mechanical diff.
Okay.
So what they do instead is use the brakes to apply. They see one all of a sudden spinning faster,
Oh, okay.
apply the brake on this side. So it slows that wheel down and forces the power to the other side.
Okay.
So it's, or torque vectoring, I think. Some people call it torque
Got it.
vectoring, some call it E-diffs, whatever.
E-diff, but torque vectoring, I've heard.
It's the same thing. It's relying on the brakes to help control the differentials, which sounds great in theory, but all you're doing is you're heating up the brakes and you're wasting power.
Yeah, you're slowing
Right?
down.
Right. It's
Yeah.
it's slowing stuff down to force stuff to go the other way. So it's not the most efficient use. Or maybe I shouldn't say efficient use. It is efficient use because you're not having to add
It's
limited
still not
slips.
efficient if you're slowing.
It's
not
efficient in you're using something the car already has to help
Yeah,
something,
that
but
way, I guess. and
but it's not
less-
efficient in terms of performance.
Yeah.
Basically, give the description of, all right, so here's your ACDT case. Front diff is inside here, and then this is your center diff clutches. You can't say your center diff is in here because the differential gears are always in the transmission. Same with the non-ACD. The differential gears, the center differential gears are in the transmission. But what's controlling the slip of the center differential is in here for the ACD. This is the actual active center differential clutches. And then the non-ACD has a viscous center. And that's what's in this last. So this is your front diff of your non-ACD. Front differential, open. And in here is it's a sealed unit. It's a viscous diff, so it's filled with a viscous fluid that, as it heats up, it starts engages as with heat. So most of the time, a lot of these get burnt up and they end up not working that well at all.
So that might be the case with this one, even since that looks burnt up.
Well, it's different fluid. It's its own fluid in here, so it doesn't share the actual T-case fluid or anything.
Initial thing though about visualizing it though, when you look in, like, so now technically this pin, isn't this pin the identifier for an open diff?
Yeah.
So like if you look in and see this pin, it's an open diff.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep, and
Because you don't see that in here.
the non one's just straight through.
It's just straight through. And the only reason it looks solid, I guess, before is because of that inside shaft or something.
Yeah, you've got to take out both intermediate shafts.
But a simple way of saying it then, though, is for the most part, if the intermediate shafts are out and you look through and you can see straight through, then you probably have a limited slip. If you look straight through and you see a pin going vertically or the opposite kind of direction, you know it's open.
So, and if it's an ACD T-case,
It's always LSD.
it's always LSD. So the only one you're trying to figure out if you have a non-ACD, basically the RS, right?
Yeah.
They
You
call it the
wanna know if
RS.
you have the 2004 RS, or if someone swapped it. I mean, obviously, you could buy one in aftermarket and you didn't know that someone, or you're finding out that someone put in an aftermarket LSD.
Yeah. Which is definitely a worthwhile upgrade, especially on the non-ACD.
Yeah.
If your viscous is worn out, and then you have a front open diff, power is going to go the path of least resistance. So the power is all just going to go out that front, the lightest front wheel. So if you're into like track stuff,
You're wasting power there.
you can feel it. I've driven a couple 03 Evos where, and especially on like stock suspension where you have like so much body roll and you've got all the weight coming off that inside wheel and you try to floor it, it's just in spin. Feels like a front wheel drive open diff car. But then you get in an Evo that's got proper diffs, especially a 9. You can go around a corner and floor it and it's just pulling you around the corner. No in spin at all, car's composed, and it literally pulls you around the corner.